If you and your friend's weekend reunion turned out to be a trap for a madman's insane death game, what would you do? This cabin in the woods is hiding a dark secret, and before the end of the night, they'll all be forced to play for their lives. I'm here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the revenge death game in The Blackening. These unsuspecting friends are about to have a horrifying experience. Late one night at some isolated cabin, this girl Morgan is setting the place up for a weekend getaway with her friends, who should be arriving first thing in the morning, when she notices a door across the room slowly creak open on its own. The woman peeks out into the darkness, but refuses to get any closer, shouting at whoever it is to come out. Suddenly, someone grabs her by the shoulder, but it turns out to be just her boyfriend Sean. Morgan follows him upstairs so that he can show her something weird that he found, the two having no idea that someone is watching them through the window. Upstairs, they come to a small green door with a sign that reads Game Room. Sean says that he remembers leaving it open, which makes Morgan immediately want to turn around, but he insists that there's nothing to worry about and pushes his way inside. The room is filled with games, but there's one on the center table that quickly grabs their attention, called The Blackening. It's blatantly messed up, but Morgan here says that she's curious what the rules are. That's when the piece at the center starts talking, telling them to pick a card. The woman picks the first one and reads it out loud, asking them to name one black character from a horror movie who survived until the end before their timer runs out, adding that if they get it wrong, they die. Sean quickly answers with Jada Pinkett and Omar Epps from Scream 2, but Morgan tells him that he's wrong. Getting nervous, they empty the game pieces out onto the board, noticing that one of them looks identical to the earrings that Morgan always wears. Just then, the timer runs out, and the voice from the board says that they didn't answer correctly. Suddenly, all the lights in the room go out, and the door slams shut, leaving them in total darkness. The two manage to find each other, only to realize that they can hear someone else breathing heavily in the room. Morgan turns on the light from her phone, and as soon as her back is turned, Sean gets shot through the neck with an arrow. Quickly bleeding to death, he tells Morgan to get out of there, but she crashes into a man wearing a strange black mask, and he throws her to the ground, grabbing her by the leg and dragging her into the shadows. Okay, it looks like this psycho wasn't playing around after all. There's no way that they could have known that they were walking into a death game, but still, getting killed in the warm-up round? That's just embarrassing. Hey Morgan and Sean, you up. Your first mistake was showing up to this creepy-ass cabin the night before all of your friends. Sure, I get that you were probably looking to get the place decorated and have some private quality time before the rest of the gang arrived, but that also means you'll be the first ones to get killed if you find yourself in the middle of some kind of deranged death game. Which, sure enough, is exactly what ended up happening. And it's not like you can say that there weren't plenty of warning signs. Let's start back down here on the first floor, where Morgan here noticed the door to the basement swung open by itself. Hey Morgan, I'm not sure if you know this, but heavy wooden doors don't usually do that on their own. Upstairs, we have the opposite problem, with Sean saying that he remembers leaving the door to the game room open. Morgan here was right to want to turn and run away, when you're alone in a rental house miles away from civilization. Call me paranoid, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. This brings us to the board game, which, besides being horribly offensive, was giving off some pretty bad vibes right from the start. On the cover, there's an old house in the middle of the woods, kind of like the one that you're in right now. And then on the board, we've got a knife, a well, a bow and arrow, a bear trap, and the words, "You survive." Now, each of these items is already a horror cliche on their own, but add them all together and you probably should have been able to figure out for yourself that this game was going to have some deadly consequences. Here's a question for you, Sean. After deciding to play, despite all of the red flags, and reading that if you got the wrong answer, you die, what the hell were you thinking just confidently blurting out the first answer that came to mind? As your girlfriend here correctly pointed out, the two characters that you named died in the first scene of that movie. Did you just think that you could get out of a death game by just making things up as you went along? That was the warm-up question, man. Do better. So now the door slammed shut and the lights went out. This is what you might might call not ideal. Think about it this way: if you can't see, then the killer can't see. That is, unless he's got some night vision goggles like Buffalo Bill. Sean, you only got shot here after Morgan gave away your position with the phone light. And as for you, Morgan, although you put up a pretty good fight, you made a critical mistake by continuing to push the attack against an obviously stronger opponent, when the smartest thing to do would have been to dodge back and try to maneuver around him. Instead of panicking and immediately pulling out your phone, what you both needed to do here was stay low and quiet, use sound and touch to avoid danger while you wait for your eyes to adjust to the darkness, and take advantage of the element of surprise to ambush the guy and pummel him into submission before he started picking you off one by one. When you ignore all the warning signs and wind up being victims before the real death game has even started, Morgan and Sean, you f***ed up. The next morning, these three friends, Dwayne, Lisa, and Allison, are driving through the countryside on their way to the cabin, excited to get everyone back together for some partying and good times. Meanwhile, this girl, Shanika, stops at a gas station for some snacks and a bottle of wine. Looking back at the counter, she notices the cashier watching her from the end of the aisle and backs up right into this nerdy guy, Clifton. He explains that he was on his way to the reunion too until his car broke down, so Shanika says that she'll give him a ride. When they finally arrive at the cabin, they notice their friend King being questioned by a park ranger. The man accuses him of trespassing until Lisa pulls out the guest list and shows them that they rented the place for the weekend. The group walks inside just as a mysterious figure slips out of sight, and Allison goes to drop off her bags while the others look around the house. Upstairs, a noise draws her attention to the green door, but when she goes to check it out, she finds out that it's locked and isn't able to get inside. King here starts mixing up a drink in the kitchen, pouring in an insane amount of sugar, and calling it his special Kool-Aid. Taking the concoction outside, he leaves Lisa in the room by herself, and as soon as he's gone, she hears something on the other side of this door that leads down to the basement, but decides not to investigate. Later on that night, Dwayne here notices one of Morgan's earrings laying on the floor. Just then, the back door of the house slowly opens on its own, but he closes it and locks it without stepping outside. As he's peering through the window to get a better look at what's out there, Shanika jumps out from the darkness, scaring him half to death. The woman bursts into the party, followed by the nerdy guy Clifton, but no one there seems to remember where they know him from. She asks the others where Morgan and Sean are, but Allison says that they texted her earlier that day and said they'd be back this evening. Suddenly, all the lights in the house go out, and when King stands up to check out the fuse box, Lisa notices someone passing by the window outside. Starting to get worried, everyone decides to stick together as they go see what happened. Upstairs, they find that every room has been locked, and someone put the game room sign back up on the green door. Thinking that it must be a prank from their missing friends, King here tries the handle, and this time, the door swings open. Okay, anyone who can't tell that this is a trap must not be watching enough How to Beat videos. Something tells me that they're not going to like what they discover on the other side of that door, but I guess there's only one way to find out. Imagine this: you and your friends rent a house out in the middle of nowhere, when suddenly all of the lights shut off, and it looks like someone's watching you from outside. Is it safe to stick around or time to go into survival mode? The good news is that there's safety in numbers, and that's why it's important that everyone sticks together. First stop, the kitchen or garage, so everyone can grab something like a frying pan, bat, or paddle to defend themselves. Then it's time to head for the fuse box, which should be somewhere like the garage, laundry room, or if you're extremely unlucky, the basement. Remember, this would be the perfect spot for an ambush, so you need to be very aware of your surroundings, and maybe let someone else be the one who goes first. If you can get the power on without running into trouble, then congratulations, you survived the night. But when it comes to this group of friends, they're about to walk right into a trap that's straight out of their worst nightmares. After getting everyone armed up and doing what they can to restore the power, the next step would be to deal with whoever it was they noticed watching them through the living room window. Sticking together, they should make their way to every entrance in the house, locking the doors to make sure that no one can get in, and also giving themselves a chance to get familiar with any escape routes if things start to go all Friday the 13th. Then it's time to gather in a defensible location and call for help if they have cell service. or wait until morning when they'll have better odds of finding their way back to safety. They'll want to choose an area of the house that doesn't limit their potential escape routes and has plenty of furniture to use as makeshift barricades. Right now, they might think that it's all just a prank from two of their missing friends, but the truth is that something more dangerous could be going on. For example, Shanika here noticed that the creepy guy from the gas station watching her every move, so it's entirely possible that he stealthily followed her and Clifton back to the house and waited until nightfall to start his attack. A smart move would be to activate all of their car alarms using their key remotes, which should cause enough of a commotion to hopefully scare him off, or even get the attention of anyone in the area who might be able to help. Also, when it comes to finding the missing couple, it's not unusual for close friends to share their locations on their iPhones, or even through Snap Maps. So if they can get cell service or connect to Wi-Fi, a quick check of these apps might reveal if they're somewhere in the house. If that doesn't work, then they can always try just calling them. If both of their phones are turned off and go straight to voicemail, then that's immediately suspicious. And if they hear one of the phones start ringing from somewhere like the basement, then they'll know that it's too late for their friends and time for them to get ready to fight for their lives. One of them should peek into the room and have a look around to see if it's even worth their time. After a quick glance, they'd see that there's only one way out, and a suspiciously placed board game just sitting there on the center table. It should be pretty obvious that you do not want to go in there, but unfortunately, these friends here still think that it's all a joke, and they're about to walk straight into a trap. Stepping inside, they notice the Blackening game there on the table, pointing out that their friend would never plan something like this. Allison realizes that each piece represents an aspect of one of their personalities, handing the figures to their matching friends. Still convinced that it's a prank, they all agree to play the game, but that was their biggest mistake. Just then, the creepy voice starts to speak, telling them to pick a card and save Morgan. Suddenly, the door slams shut, and the TV turns on by itself, showing camera footage of their friend tied up in a chair, while the creepy voice starts to explain the rules. They need to answer the question correctly before the timer runs out, and if they manage to get 10 questions right, everyone will be free to go. However, if they get one question wrong, then their friend will be killed, and if they refuse to play at all, everyone dies. To prove that it means business, the voice shows a man standing behind Morgan on the TV, before cutting to an image of their friend Sean's lifeless body. Everyone starts freaking out, but Clifton here says that they need to play to save their friend, and they all reluctantly agree. Okay, this is bad. They're all officially trapped in this psycho's death game, and they're going to have to think quickly if they want to survive. Before the game even started, they noticed that each character piece matched with a major trait of their personalities, like a purse for Lisa and her materialistic lifestyle, and a crown for King because, well, that's his name. The one that sticks out the most, to me though, is the dice for Clifton, which should mean that he loves playing games. Now, call me quick to jump to conclusions, but I'm already getting suspicious of this guy. Let's not forget that he was the only person that nobody else could remember, and he also seemed the most eager to get the game started when they opened it up. In a lot of death games, the killer will plant themselves in with the victims. That way they can subtly influence their decisions and watch as they all turn on each other. Although there isn't any definitive proof yet, I'd be keeping a very close eye on Clifton here, since he's clearly the top suspect. Whoever designed the game knows a lot about each of them personally, meaning the killer must be someone who they're all close to. With this in mind, the group should start thinking about anyone who they know who could have some reason to seek revenge, and try their best to figure out why they're all here, since this could help them come up with a strategy to survive. But for now, it looks like their only choice is to play the game and see what happens. Gathering around the table, they begin drawing cards and answering questions about Black history, using their collective knowledge to make it through the first few rounds, until they're challenged to name 5 Black actors who've been on the TV show Friends. One by one, they start naming the characters that they can remember, but this time, the game says it was a trick question, and none of them were supposed to know. On the TV, they watch as the man attaches a device to their friend's hair, trying to scalp her, but only rips her wig off instead. In a burst of strength, Morgan manages to break free, kicking her attacker between the legs and running for her life. Realizing that they need to get out of there, King goes back and tries the game room door. Luckily this time it's open, and they all rush back to the main part of the house. The group immediately starts trying to get outside, only to realize that the killer has locked them in. Grabbing a stone decoration, Shanika pelts it at the window as hard as she can, but the glass turns out to be reinforced. Even if they could somehow break through, Lisa notices that there are bars on the other side, and the kidnapper flattened their car tires by shooting them with arrows. While they're all figuring out what to do, the TV turns on and shows Morgan running up the basement stairs, and the boys start trying to set her free. Dwayne notices the killer closing in, so King here runs to his bag and grabs a small handgun, shouting for Morgan to stand back while he shoots the lock. After a few shots, the door slowly cracks open, but nobody steps out, and the darkness makes it impossible to see anything inside. Suddenly, an arrow flies out of the darkness, hitting King in the shoulder. Another shot nearly misses Lisa's head, and they all run for their lives as the killer steps towards them out of the basement, except for Shanika, who bravely charges at the man and traps him in the doorway instead. Dwayne rushes in to back her up, and while she's holding the door shut, the woman shouts at Lisa to go and get them a knife, jamming it straight into his foot and slamming the door as he retreats from the injury. Everyone gathers back in the living room. But just then, another killer appears from behind and fires at them with his crossbow. They all manage to dive out of the way, except for the unlucky King here, who takes another shot right in the same spot. Nnamdi lunges for the pistol and misses every shot, but it's enough to scare the attacker off for now. Grabbing King, but dropping the gun, they all follow Clifton, who leads them back to the game room, letting the door close and saying that they're locked inside once again. Okay, I know that they're under a lot of stress here, but why the hell would they ever go back to the game room? Of all the places that they could have gone, the room with no useful weapons or escape routes is absolutely the last place that I would have picked. The group missed their best chance at turning the tables back downstairs when the killer finally revealed himself. Stabbing him in the foot was a sweet move, but what they really should have done here was have someone take King's pistol and shout for Shanika and Dwayne to let him open the door, and then blast the guy as soon as he tried to step through. All of the doors may be locked, but the killer still managed to get inside. Either he has the keys, or there's another way out somewhere down in the basement. Whatever the case, taking him out right then would have been their best bet. There must be 2 or more killers working together, since there's no way that the guy could have made it to the other side of the house so quickly. Knowing this, killing one of the attackers won't be enough to stop them, because the other ones will just keep coming after you. But if you could somehow manage to take one of them alive, then you might be able to use them as a human shield or a bargaining chip, and possibly interrogate them for any helpful information that you could use to your advantage. So if you can, it might be smart to aim for the leg. Right now, it looks like they outnumber the killers 3 to 1. Instead of panicking and running back to the game room, I would have gathered everyone together, taken King's pistol and any other weapons that we could find, and stormed the basement to either take out the wounded attacker or to see if there was another way to escape. The worst thing to do is to give them more opportunities to start picking you off one at a time, so it's much smarter to go in for the kill now while they're on the retreat, then run right back into their trap. But it looks like these friends are about to be stuck in round 2. The voice tells them to pick another card, and Lisa pulls one from the deck. Reading it out loud, she says that the killer will spare their lives only if they choose one person from the group as a sacrifice. They have 2 minutes to decide which one of them will be killed, otherwise they're all going to die. Each of them argues their case, ruling them out one by one until they eventually land on Clifton, saying that he wasn't even invited to the reunion in the first place. With time running out, each of them votes for Clifton, locking him in as the sacrifice. Angry and humiliated, he scolds them for turning on each other and giving the game exactly what it wanted, before grabbing a poker from the fireplace and walking outside to meet his fate. The rest of the group immediately starts to feel bad for what they've just done, but when they try to go get him, the door to the room is locked tight. Just then, the TV turns back on, and they watch as the killer shoots Clifton in the chest with an arrow, looking up at the camera and dragging him out of sight. To make matters worse, the voice chimes in that they broke the rules since Clifton didn't vote, so that turn doesn't even count towards their score. Furious, Nnamdi slams the board to the ground, breaking the speaker. In response to this outburst, the killer appears on TV staring straight into the camera, and says that since they refuse to keep playing, they'll be going straight into the sudden death round. The only rule is to survive. And after 3 minutes, he'll unlock every door in the house, leaving them to choose whether they're better off running out into the woods or trying to stand their ground somewhere inside. Everyone starts to argue about what they think they should do, quickly realizing that they're split on which strategy to go with. Shanika here proves that she's the smartest once again by pointing out that either way, they all need to grab some weapons. So the group decides to make their way over to the kitchen and arm up. Now that they've all got a weapon, the conversation turns back to whether they should run for their lives or bunker down. Realizing that they're all not going to agree, Allison chimes in that they need to split up. And after saying their goodbyes, Allison, Shanika, and King head out through the back door, leaving Dwayne, Lisa, and Namdi behind to fend for themselves. Okay, if we're listening to the killer, then we're left with two options here. Either taking our chances out in the woods, or staying in the house and trying to hold them off. But if we use 100% of our brain, there's actually a third strategy that we could go with. There's a good chance that the killer is going to instantly take out anyone who's brave enough to go outside, so at first, I'd put myself on the team that planned to stay in the house and use the runners as meat shields to see what ended up happening to them. If they made it to the tree line without being attacked, then I'd grab a weapon and start to follow their path for a short distance before quietly slipping off of the trail and doubling back to the house, and then following the path again. This way, if the killer didn't immediately go after the first group and waited to follow me instead, I'd now be behind them and have the element of surprise on my side. Now, you definitely don't want to end up getting lost, so if we're going to run for it, it's important to have a plan for where we're going. The best strategy would be to sneak up the driveway and back to the road, and stay out of sight while following it back to any sort of civilization, like a neighbor's house or a gas station where you could contact some help. It's not going to be easy, but I'd much rather take my chances out in the woods where I could get creative with my strategy than back in the house where the killer controls the environment. After making sure that the coast is clear, Allison's group starts to run down the trail, having no idea that the killer is watching them from the shadows. Eventually, they make it to a river and realize they went the wrong way, somehow losing Allison in the process. Shanika here notices that she can see houses in the distance, telling her friend that she's going to swim across and get help. Since he can't swim, King decides to hang back and keep a lookout from up in the tree. Just as she's about to make it across, the killer comes out of hiding and starts shooting at her with his crossbow. Luckily, he's not a very good shot, and Shanika manages to dodge his arrows, turning around and swimming back to the shore. Okay, what the hell was Shanika thinking here? She was so close to making it across, but for some reason, she decided to swim back towards the man with the crossbow. Not exactly the smartest move. Instead of turning around, what she should have done was kept pushing across the river and then ran like hell for one of those houses that she could see in the distance. Since they're out in the countryside, there's a good chance that the homeowners have a gun. So as long as she was careful enough with her approach to avoid scaring them and getting shot herself, she should be home free and able to contact the police to go out there and save the rest of her friends. Going back towards the danger when she was almost at the finish line was a horrible decision, and hopefully she doesn't end up paying the price.
Coming soon to a theater near you, How to Beat's official Patreon. All the guts, all the blood, all the screams, plus nasty extras. How to Beat's Patreon. 2 times the shock, 2 times the terror, 2 times the subscription levels. Have a damn good day, and it only gets better. Both levels bid you welcome to pre-sales for ghoulish official How to Beat merchandise, and support the evil scientists behind the How to Beat videos. It only gets better. Subscribers are invited to the X-rated party. Ad-free and uncensored videos, too repulsive for all audiences, are available on demand. How to Beat's Patreon. In space, no one can hear you scream, but on Patreon, everyone can see you bleed. How to Beat's Patreon. Join us if you dare.
Realizing that he needs to take action, King reaches for his knife but drops it right at the killer's feet, leaving him with no choice except to dive out of the tree and tackle him to the ground. Getting to their feet, the two of them start to brawl, with King easily overpowering the guy now that he's unarmed. But just when he has him on the ropes, he cramps up from drinking too much Kool-Aid and the killer quickly grabs an arrow, stabbing him through the back of the leg. The man stands over him, striking him hard across the face, and that's when Allison appears out of the forest, holding 3 tree arrows in her hand like Wolverine and jumping towards him with a nasty spin move. Knocking the knife out of his hand, she stuns the guy with a palm strike to the throat before using her arrow hand to punch him several times in the legs and chest. And he collapses to the ground, finally dead. Taking off his mask, Shanika realizes that it's the same one-eyed man that she saw back at the gas station. Allison here decides to search his pockets, finding an asthma inhaler that shows his name, Camden Connor, and lists his address as the cabin where they're staying. When Shanika looks at his boots, she points out that it can't be the same man who ambushed them from the basement, because this guy's clearly lacking a stab wound to the foot, meaning there must be more than one killer on the loose. Okay, now that they know that there are 2 killers involved, this opens up an opportunity for them to settle the score. If this guy came after them, then that must mean that his accomplice is most likely occupied with trying to kill the friends who stayed back at the house. Knowing this, what they need to do here is grab this guy's weapon, double back to the cabin, and get the jump on the other freak while he's distracted. After that, they'd be able to catch their breath and figure out a way to get help, knowing for sure that the danger was taken care of. Of course, there's always the option to cut and run right now while they still have the chance to get away, leaving the rest of the group to fend for themselves, which would probably be the safer bet. Meanwhile, back at the house, Lisa here sees that the basement door is open and decides to go rescue Morgan, with the other 2 hesitantly following her down the stairs. After passing by a massive stone wall, they come to the room where their friend was being held hostage, but there's no sign of her anywhere except for bloodstains on the floor. Looking around the workshop, Dwayne notices a desk full of monitors that show security camera footage from every room in the house, realizing that the killers have been secretly watching them the whole time. Just then, they hear a noise from somewhere above them, and Nnamdi grabs a shield before going back upstairs. The group rushes through the back door and nearly crashes right into a shocked Ranger White. They immediately drop their weapons to the floor, but Lisa still questions if they can even trust him. The Ranger reassures them that he's just there to help, and tries to radio for backup after they explain what's been going on, but isn't able to get through since the killers are blocking any signals. The friends follow Ranger White down to his car and jump inside, but just when he's about to get in, he notices something happening down the trail, telling the others to lock the doors and lay low while he goes to investigate and promising to be right back. While they're waiting for him to return, Lisa finds one of the killer's masks on the floor by her feet. Horrified, the 3 of them start trying to get out and run, but keep locking themselves in because they're all going for it at the same time. Just as they finally get the doors open, the killer fires 2 arrows into the side of the car and they quickly take cover back inside. That's when Ranger White jumps up in the window, begging them to unlock the door and let them in, but Lisa responds by simply holding up the mask. He promises them that he found it out in the woods, but it's already too late. And suddenly an arrow pierces right through his neck, killing him and shattering the driver's side window. Deciding to run for their lives, while he stops to reload, Lisa and Nnamdi make it to safety, but Dwayne ends up pinned on the side of the truck. He tells them to save themselves, never believing that they'll actually do it, but the 2 of them flee the scene with almost no hesitation, leaving Dwayne behind to survive on his own. Okay, while everyone was busy panicking, they missed a chance to arm themselves with a very powerful weapon. Ranger White here was carrying a pistol, and since we didn't hear any gunshots, it's safe to say that the thing was still fully loaded. In between crossbow shots, Dwayne could have easily slipped around to the other side of the truck, or picked up a long stick to reach underneath and pull the weapon towards him, and then used it to provide covering fire while someone grabbed the Ranger's keys, started up the truck, and got them the hell out of there. Instead, he hesitated and gave his friends a chance to leave him for dead, just so that they could run right back to where all of this chaos started in the first place. Lisa and Nnamdi managed to make it back to the house, hiding out in an air vent above the staircase while they try to figure out what to do next. Following their tracks, the killer comes in and starts searching around, but when he looks up at the vent, they quickly hide out of sight. Just as he's about to look closer, someone turns on the record player, drawing his attention away, and as soon as he's gone, Dwayne jumps up and climbs into the vent to hide with them. Getting annoyed, the killer turns off the signal blocker, and their phones instantly start going off. Their hiding spot still hasn't been discovered, but Dwayne here can't keep himself quiet, and suddenly, arrows start flying up through the vent right in front of them. After hearing them scream, the killer climbs up and sees them inside, which is when Dwayne gets so nervous that he pukes all over the man's face, sending him tumbling over the railing and down the flight of stairs. Dwayne nervously runs down the stairs and grabs the crossbow, with Lisa following close behind. She raises her candlestick and swings it at the killer, but accidentally catches it on a wooden support beam, giving the man an open shot to kick her straight in the chest. Nnamdi hits him with a 4-piece combo, only to slip and fall to the ground as the killer stands over him. Dwayne aims the crossbow and fires a shot directly at his head, the man blocking it with his hand at the last second, but toppling over and crashing to the floor, seemingly dead. The group wastes no time getting back to arguing about personal drama, and while they're distracted, the psycho pulls the arrow out of his hand and stands up to finish the job. Suddenly, another arrow pierces him from behind, this time fired by Shanika and her squad. He slowly turns to confront them, but that's when Lisa here takes her candlestick and bashes him across the side of the head, standing over him and pulverizing his face for way longer than was arguably necessary. Nnamdi checks the man's pockets, finding a wallet that reveals his name was Clive Connor, the twin brother of the man who attacked them out in the woods. They also discover a receipt with each of their initials listed, proving that someone paid the men a measly $100 per person to kill them all off. Okay, both of the attackers are finally dead, but that doesn't mean that they're safe yet. According to that receipt that they found, someone staged this whole thing and paid the rednecks to take them out. And if they're paying close enough attention, they should notice something interesting about that list. There's only one person whose initials weren't written down: Clifton. And although they think that they saw him die, there's also a good chance that he faked his death to clear himself of any suspicion. Based on this, I wouldn't be getting too comfortable until I also found his body and confirmed the kill. The group starts discussing what to do next, with everyone deciding to head back down into the workshop to search for any signs of their missing friends, and hopefully use the computers to somehow signal for help, while Allison and King stay upstairs to keep watch. Making their way into the basement, they turn on the lights and find that the Ranger and Clifton's bodies are propped up at a table with the Blackening game placed between them. Nnamdi pulls a note from Clifton's pocket which says that they're getting warmer, and contains a newspaper clipping of a fatal accident where Clifton was driving under the influence and killed a woman who was walking down the street. Just then, a TV in the corner of the room turns on, showing footage of the nerd throwing 2 bodies down into the basement well. As soon as they realize that it's him, Clifton stands up from his chair, revealing that he was behind the attacks all along, and he has the entire house rigged with explosives that he'll set off if they try to fight back or escape. Using some switches on his belt, he remotely locks the doors and traps them in the basement, ordering them to drop their weapons so that they can finish the game. Lisa here asks him why he's doing this, but that's actually the question that he wants them to answer. Putting the pieces together, they realize that it must have something to do with the accident from the newspaper. It turns out that on that same night 10 years ago, everyone here was at a Juneteenth party, and Clifton was just excited to be there. Although he was never a great dancer or social butterfly, one thing that he was always good at was games, and he hoped to use his talent to fit in. But the only game that they were interested in playing was spades, and he had no understanding of the rules since nobody plays it in Vermont, where he grew up. After making a rookie mistake, the rest of the group relentlessly made fun of him, making Clifton feel so embarrassed that he drank alcohol for the first time in his life and drove home to get away, which is when he fatally struck the woman and ended up serving 4 years in jail. Blaming the friends for the accident, he decided to hire the rednecks to take them all out, but now that they're dead, he's going to finish the job himself. Okay, now we for sure know who was really behind this madness. They're cornered with no way to escape, and Clifton says that he has the place rigged to blow, which leaves them with only one option: rush him now, while they have a numbers advantage before he has a chance to start picking people off, and hope that he's either bluffing about the explosives or that they can take him down before he pushes the button. If they could get the detonator away from him, then this little nerd shouldn't be much of a problem for 4 angry adults who are fighting for their lives. Time's running out, and they need to act now before Clifton goes through with any more of this evil scheme. Giving them one last chance, he demands that Lisa choose one person from the group to serve as a sacrifice. Shanika here starts going off on Clifton, and while he's distracted, Dwayne gives Lisa a look, signaling to her that he wants her to play along with the game. Going along with the plan, Lisa chooses herself as a sacrifice, which causes Clifton to fly into a rage since that wasn't part of the rules. While he's talking, Dwayne wordlessly signals to Nnamdi that they're going to jump him, but when he looks back at Clifton, he realizes that the guy picked up on the whole plan. Raising his crossbow, he fires an arrow at Lisa, but Nnamdi jumps in front of it just in time. He's still alive, although badly injured, and that's when Allison finds another control panel on the dead man upstairs, shutting off all the lights and giving her friends a chance to find cover. Dwayne immediately rushes at Clifton and holding him still while Shanika fires an arrow into his shoulder. Putting out a jar of chili powder from his pocket, he throws the dust in Clifton's face before kicking him down the well. In the morning, they all sit in front of the cabin wondering what they should do next and laughing at the idea of calling the cops. Instead, they decide that it'd be safer to call the fire department, only for them all to get blasted with the hose as soon as they arrive.
But what would you do? If you and your friends were invited to a weekend extravagant getaway in a cabin in the woods somewhere, only to find out that you were being hunted by 2 evil rednecks, would you grab whatever weapons you could find and fight back? Or would you find a closet to cower in until you all were picked off one by one? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this. Oh, and just as a reminder, we upload on Wednesdays and Saturdays now. I think I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah. Have a damn good day.